society may be thwarted. It gives me great pleasure, therefore, to present to you today the founder of the League, Miss Sylvia Stankhurst, singing for us a song which offers sage advice to the worried citizen. Sylvia's mother, the celebrated Emmeline Stankhurst, will accompany on the pianoforte.
All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky.
Who wasn't muted, live from the Sydney studios in Australia. Jump into the chat room at freedomslips.com while we're on air. You can listen to us from there. Also, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Mecky knows how many ways there are to listen to us. If you live in Kentucky, FM, WZZR 101.3. You can get an app, Revolution Radio, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, Radio Tuner, Spreaker.com, iHeart, Live 365, and our beautiful shiny Side Out app. At home on a Grace tabletop digital radio or driving around in a General Motors vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. All are revolutions in radio. You can buy a CD of a favourite host for the 2013 season. Each CD costs $30. Check out the info on the station's website. Also, I've heard, Mecky, that a percentage of the sales goes to the host. Awesome. Please buy it.
Nice. Yes.
I'm not on bended knee, but please, would you please. The number to call in if you're in the USA is 347-688-2902 with my eyes closed, by the way. Solaris had an awesome show yet again. Karen Quinn, to start her, was great, wasn't she, Mecky?
Always. But yes, this was a great guest.
We, today, Mecky, this is show number, drumroll, 117.
Yes, or 710 and 100. Yes. Now there's method to our madness. 117 shows is a lot of shows. I went through the archives actually over the weekend to have a look at some of the topics we raised, and I had a conversation with a friend just a couple of weeks ago, I think, when I was in Singapore, and he said, "Well, haven't you run out of stuff yet?" No, stuff is still there, and if the world is any indication, it's getting crazier, so I don't think we're ever going to run out of stuff. In fact, there's a lot of things we haven't even scratched on. There are a lot of things we have covered in depth. Chindolo just in the chat room said that I promised to have all the answers this week. All the answers we gave you already. Show number 100, guys. Go and check out the archives, please.
That's right.
The hypothesis, we have laid it all out, at least what we think is likely to happen, has happened, will happen, and what we can do to not let it happen potentially as well. So the hypothesis, show number 100, Solaris was our guest for the first 2 hours of that. It's a 4-hour marathon show,
awesome,
which has enjoyed several hundred views on YouTube, which is great. Our best rating show on YouTube, though, by far, is the interview that Dave conducted. Help me out here with
Brian Foster.
Correct, sir. Exactly right.
Live
he's the
from
guy.
Peru.
Yeah, with the skulls. Remember the elongated skulls?
Yeah,
correct.
6,800 views so far, and rising.
So that's pretty good.
We thought the 4-hour Bernie Mendes interview was awesome, but you know what? That the half-an-hour interview with Brian has seen, the sky's the limit with that one. It's just going crazy, isn't it?
Well, it seems, look, it is all about immediacy and what people are interested in, and what's on people's minds. And I guess the Paracas skulls and Brian Forster and the work that he's doing, as well as several other researchers, of course, at the moment, is top of the list for us people in the fringe, if you will.
It's certainly you're right. I think it's a lot of the fringe people. It's certainly the people in the middle of it, and all the way to the fringe of our audience, and certainly where we are. We enjoy that kind of information. It's real information. It's tangible. There's proof. There's DNA. Blah blah blah. And it really does mean this is one of those elements where it means that history books are wrong. Time to change them. Trying to update them. Trying to get the word out for people. And it's really is quite annoying that this stuff isn't being presented by the eight owners of all of the news media.
Yeah, the problem here is this, though, and one of the show's friends, Hovey, posted a picture. The 1,500 media corporations and newspapers and TV stations and so forth are owned by six people or 6 corporations worldwide. Now, most of you might not find a problem with that. I think it's horrendous, but having said that, Brian Forster and the Paracas skulls and the other researchers that are bringing similar things to light are facing the same uphill battle that Lloyd Pye faced with the unfortunately named Star Child skull. He never said it was an alien skull.
That's right.
He just said it is very different from anything we've come across ever. Okay, and it is. And if you do take the time to do your own research, look into it, and not look at what the debunkers are writing about it. Not what they're... Most of them haven't even looked at the research themselves. So look at it yourself. Look at Lloyd Pye's side. Look at the scientific data that is there. Okay, the DNA analysis, but also just simply the microscopic analysis of the bone structure of the skull.
Yeah, and the material the bone is made of.
Correct. It's mostly... Well, it's most like enamel, like our tooth enamel.
Yeah, tooth enamel.
Not only that, it's also it has a funny, odd red substance in it. It also has some kind of a fiber running through it, which gives it extra tensile strength. So it is bigger than a human skull on average. Like has, I should say, a bigger volume for brain matter, and it's also very, very thin. So the skull is a lot thinner than a human skull. The actual bone walls, but because of the uniqueness of the material, it is also a lot stronger. Okay, it's a lot stronger. And there are certain things missing, like sinus cavities, the position of the ears, the position of the eyes.
The eyes, the sockets themselves aren't deep enough to contain an eye.
Well, our kind of eye anyway.
Well, that's true. Also, not only is it flat at the back and it wasn't cradle boarded, but the amount of segments that the head is made of, when a skull's gone through the birth canal, there's 3 plates that have to fuse. Doesn't have the same plates. It has different nerve and vessel openings at the rear of the skull as well. It's something else. Like if it was only one of those items, sure, dismiss it. Yeah, go ahead.
See, the Paracas skulls are very similar. Again, we're not talking about cradle-boarded skulls, of which there are many. And of course they exist, and we don't deny that. There seems to be a fashion, but you have to ask yourself always. I mean, what kicked this fashion off? Can
I drive this for 1 sec, Mac?
Drive it, sir.
Guess what? What was the intent to strap one's foot in China?
To make it smaller.
And why was that, Mackie?
Because it's prettier.
It was fashionable at the time. I used to wear it under my belt.
Right. Well, but the Kaiser stole them all.
The emperor wanted to... He preferred women with small feet. Don't ask me why. I'm not going anywhere near that, right? But he wanted a lady with small feet. He said small feet are more desirable. Every single person decided to strap their child's feet to make them small. Yeah?
Yep.
It became something. Now, with the skulls, if you are in proximity to someone who has an odd-shaped skull, they happen to be, hierarchically up in your society, you might appear to want to emulate it. And I think the cradle boarding was just two reasons. One was so the women could go back in the field and tend to the crops, because that's what people did in those days. And the only way to do that was to strap the baby to the back. They had to cradle board it. The other one was decorative. North American Indians used to do this as well. There was a lot of evidence that showed that they were doing the same thing. They were strapping the baby's skulls so that they would become elongated. But it didn't mean that the ones that have been found, like the Paracas ones, had been, because that's not the case. So these things, these are these big things, that are monumental things that are being found today. These are game changers, people.
Absolutely. In fact, I just had a thought.
Uh-oh.
Bear with me.
The floor is yours, sir.
No, it's a far-fetched thing, but in Germany, I told you this, fairy tales are taken relatively seriously. You can study at uni. You can have a degree in fairy tale study, if you will. Okay, so it's not something that's just a child's play, if you must. No, so I was thinking of
the pun is fun.
I'm thinking of the fairy tale of Cinderella, Aschenputtel, in German. Cinderella is, you know, she has two wicked sisters, stepmother, you know, but she also has a fairy godmother, and that fairy godmother gives her glass slippers, you know, and she also gives her this fancy dress, and so she can go to the ball and meet the prince. So she does, and she loses one of the glass slippers. Then the prince goes, you know, far and wide in the country and looks for a woman whose feet, or foot rather, will fit into the glass slipper. I can't find him, and then the sisters, eventually, you know, the prince comes to their house, and the two wicked sisters are trying to squeeze in, and the mother goes, you know, chop off your toe if it doesn't fit. So they do, both of them. And there's some birds, you know, in the rafters saying, oh, there's blood in the shoe, it's the wrong one, you don't want this one. Anyways, it rhymes much better in German. And eventually, of course, the slipper fits her, meaning, of course, she had quite dainty feet. So I'm sorry, but it just seems to me there's like maybe a fragment of memory that maybe has to do with the foot binding as well that made it to Europe. I don't know. Okay, I'm talking about cultural cross-contamination here. I mean, obviously, it's small foot and extreme length, like chopping off your toes or binding your feet. You know, again, sorry, that's how my brain works. I do apologize, but there it is. So it's we're talking about a habit or a fashion that had to have its origin somewhere, as Dave has pointed out, and he's quite right in saying, you know, well, maybe there was someone that was hierarchically higher, right? Maybe there was someone you wanted to be that person, or you wanted to be like that person. I mean, today we get tattoos like the rock stars, or we wear the same thing, and you know, sometimes we don't even wear much at all. You know, like the Kardashians. Again, I'm picking on them, but you know, it's human nature. So while yes, cradle boarding was there, it was a copycat act. There were people with skulls of that size and shape and, you know, what who knows what.
Egyptian
and then
emperor.
they were
the Egyptian,
and they were emulated.
Osiris.
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, one of the Greek philosophers, I don't want to get it wrong, could have been Solon, could have been Plato or Socrates, might have been Plato actually, but he had a funny shaped skull like that as well.
Wow.
Okay, so these skulls, while today we might not come across them that much anymore, but we have seen pictures. I've seen photographs online, and they weren't like Photoshop photographs, or at least, you know, they looked quite old, of people with skulls like that. So the Paracas skulls could have just been another branch of humanity, potentially people that had been interfered with. We've spoken about intervention in the past. Again, that brings us back to Lloyd Pye and potentially Brian Foster as well. So these things are out there. And the problem is that the scientific evidence is very clear. So good science should follow, you know, the path wherever it leads. If it agrees with the current system of understanding or not is irrelevant. Because guess what? You know, things will change, and we have not reached the pinnacle of our knowledge. Assuming we would have, it would be hubris by any stretch of the imagination. In the 19th century, they thought, well, we know pretty much everything there is to know. Right? Let's sit back and just enjoy life. We know it all. Thank you very much.
I'm nearly wetting myself.
No,
Mickey.
not at all.
We're so far from the pinnacle of society, it's not funny.
I agree.
We're near
the
pinnacle, yeah.
No, and look, even in the past, the Romans, in fact, were master engineers. They were, and in fact, their concrete, you can look it up yourself, is better than our concrete.
Yep,
that's true. They were master road builders. They engineered marvelous structures that last to this day. Whoever built the pyramids, is something that we would have a great difficulty duplicating, even if we put all of our resources in that. I mean, we really would have a will to duplicate the exactness and intricacy of the pyramids. No, I'm not just talking putting blocks on top of each other. I'm talking about the perfect alignment. I'm talking about that the pyramid has not subsided in however many thousand years it's been there. And the internal structure as well, because it actually goes underground into the bedrock. And you had to build it with a lot of foresight, because the sarcophagus, for example, you couldn't have put in there once you finished. Oh, well, I'll put it in. Oh, well, too bad. You can't put it in.
Oops.
Why?
Hang on, that reminds me of the French, I think it was French, the French railway purchase, 2,000 carriages. This week it was announced that they're too big. They signed a contract, and they're having to shave down the station platforms. Right? That's not the worst one. The best one, for all those train spotters out there, the best one ever was, I think it was in Bulgaria or a country around there. I don't know if it was Serbia, but there was a country, and they'd put a tunnel through the mountain to the other side. Unfortunately, the tunnel's radius wasn't big enough. And once the railway track, like the train fit through the concrete tube, sure. But when you put, a flat base on it, you put the railway line, and suspended from the ceiling was the power lines for the train, it couldn't fit. Unfortunately for them, they had to drill out their tunnel and make it bigger.
That's
miles of tunnel. It's nuts, right? Who didn't think of that in advance? So we can't even successfully do what we do today, let alone build a pyramid. I would love for someone to actually build a pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
With no machinery. Go on.
No, I agree.
Good luck.
Absolutely, yeah. With copper tools,
Yep.
let's be very clear what we had. Okay, back in the day, this was the so-called Copper Age. Okay, it wasn't, or the Bronze Age. I should say Bronze Age. It wasn't the Iron Age yet, and we had just passed the Stone Age. Okay, so it was called the Bronze Age. That bronze implements, tools mostly. I mean, it's hardened copper, but
bronze is copper and tin.
Yeah, correct. So it was a little bit harder than copper. So you had also they allowed for rollers like wooden rollers and sand and all kinds of stuff. Maybe even big elephants to carry it all. But essentially you had very primitive tools. Okay, I would even give you 1 million people. I don't know how you would feed those people.
Good luck.
Or even 100,000. Good luck, exactly. Good luck feeding them. I mean, your entire economy, and this would have been a large chunk of the world's population. Relatively large at the time. You would have to divert pretty much all of your resources into building the pyramids. And it wasn't just the one pyramid, don't make no mistake. There were 3 of them, okay? Aligned exactly to the belt stars in Orion.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
okay,
Meki, we spoke about this before, and I think it was 34 stones per day had to be floated down the Nile on barges, they say, offloaded and continued. So 34 were, cut from the quarry. 34 were dressed, which is the term for, the stonework, dressed for transport, and then finalized, maybe on the way, I doubt it. It may be at the other end, I'm not sure. But they were offloaded. Remember that the barge had to dock. They had to have some way of being able to transfer it from the boat or the barge onto the dock, which had to take, in some cases hundreds of tons, and then move it. Like, we're talking about wood. Even with counterbalances, it means you double up the weight of the machine, because you need to counterbalance it the same. Yes. I seriously doubt any of that could have occurred. I still don't know how. I'm putting my hand up saying, you know what? I don't know. Don't know how they did it. Look,
again, I'm with you 100%. I mean, even if you allow for other things to have happened, I mean, let's say unlimited resources, and so forth. I mean, an army, not an army, but a workforce for 100,000 people requires 3 or 4 times that in support, in logistics. And, so because, I mean, you've got people that are attending to the camps, the families of those people, of course, the cooks, the bakers,
there's a whole infrastructure behind it.
It is, and you can't function without. I mean, this is a very, very advanced achievement. I mean, our civilization is I think we're at a point where we could, if we really, really, really wanted to, and invested the money and resources, we potentially could equal that. It would be hard. We would have to build a whole bunch new machinery. We would have to build cranes that can lift that kind of stuff, specifically for this job. And let's not forget they didn't have that then. But we digress slightly. Having said that, it was important though, because as I said, I went through the archives and we shared with you a great number of topics, and we give it a little bit of the shiny side spin, you know, with the tinfoil heads on in some instances. And you know, we spoke about governments, didn't we, Dave? And how it all hangs together. But you know, what are your thoughts around that?
You know what? I just don't know. And one day, if we, Mekki, if we were lucky enough to, you know, go into some deep dark, you know, black project sub basement, and meet the single person that's involved in information dissemination, and say, well, who built the pyramids? And they tell us. You go, awesome. And I go, why aren't you telling anyone else that? Oh, because you're not, you know, what's the point, really? Yeah, printing all those textbooks again. You know, I think this really where I would like to go with this is to our today's news. Yeah. How does this stuff compare to today? Because of, you know, controlling the media and you know, what's lost information. Does everyone remember? It's nearly 3 months ago now. The missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. And don't go, oh, that's old news. Well, you're right, it is old news. But I'm going to tell you something even better. A news story was released this week about the information that was intentionally put out to mislead everybody, to do with the plane's flight recorders and those sounders when they heard the beeps and the echoes coming from in the Indian Ocean. Please, if you're ready for this, it's hilarious. The underwater scientists have labelled the search for MH370 a debacle, and say the Prime Minister Tony Abbott, our current Prime Minister, was playing politics when he prematurely announced the black box pingers had been found. The actual experts said that there wasn't any way that they were from the black boxes because the frequency was different. The frequency was at, I think the exact detail is 33 kilohertz, was different from that of 37 kilohertz, which is generated by underwater acoustic beacons. And the signals were also detected some 30 kilometres and 4 days apart. But our Prime Minister in China told their media that we'd found it, we were within kilometres of it, and we'd have closure. That's what he said on their media. He was over there saying hello to everybody. And the scientists are going, are you mad? No, they weren't even the right sounds from the right kind of device, not even in the right frequency. And do you know what? Even if they were it, we're never going to find it. Forget it. Just forget it.
No, that's right. And on that, there was an interview, I don't know if you saw that, a few nights ago on ABC TV, which, by the way, in Australia is the public broadcasting service, if you will, PBS, that the government funds largely, so it has actually fairly good programming and news. It's still part of the puppet show, but there was an interview or a special report. I think it's called the ABC. I can't remember what the show was actually called. It could be the 7:30 report, which was in fact talking about the missing Malaysian airline flight, and they had the minister for transport on there as well. And it's telling to watch it. There are a lot of questions he answered and a lot of questions he didn't answer. Okay, I mean, he does reveal that the military radar did pick it up, okay, from several countries, and just they thought, oh well, you know, we'll just let it go, which is odd in itself. So there are a lot, and even now Okay, this was just this week. So even now, we have not had closure or answers or any closer to knowing what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and who did what. Okay, we just don't know. And in fact, at this point, I have no hope, similarly to 9/11, that we will ever get the whole truth. I mean, you have many things like this. Okay, you've got the Oklahoma City bombing. You know, you've got the London bombing. You've got 9/11, Austin. Yes, you've got the missing Malaysian airline flight, and the mysteries are stacking up. I mean, it is highly unlikely that we'll get the truth even once the Freedom of Information comes into force. I think it's after 20 years. There'll be documents released which will be heavily redacted, and I don't know what the laws are in Malaysia or in Southeast Asia generally around information release. I would imagine they're probably not as stringent as they are in some other countries, and then maybe documents go missing a lot easier. But rest assured that these things will keep happening because we always have the government we deserve. We always put the people in charge we deserve. If and now this is going to sound crazy, but this is tinfoil hat zone here. Thomas Jefferson said that from time to time the tree of liberty has to be watered with the blood of patriots. I'm paraphrasing. That is true. That is true. We have moved beyond that kind of mindset though now. We are very comfortable. We've succumbed to the Roman axiom of bread and games. You know, that's us, bread and games. Feed us and entertain us, and we will not give you any hassles. That's pretty much where we are as a society. I'm talking about Western culture here largely. I mean, look at the Thai people. They're not taking it anymore. The military said, "Nah, this is it. We're gonna stop this. This is crazy. We're gonna get some order in there." I'm not saying what they're doing is right. All I'm saying is, someone has taken action. Ukraine as well. We're gonna take matters in our own hands. We will.
Well,
we will decide.
That was my next story. So 2 days before the coup d'etat, the military just declared martial law, and the government went, "What? Who's done what? Oh yeah, martial law. It's martial law. Don't worry. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine." And that's the last thing that you hear before you're thrown over. You're overthrown. Yeah. So so then 2 days later they announced that they'd thrown over the government, and now guess who's the new leader? Yay, the military leader. Now I was wondering, Meki, if it has anything to do with MH370.
You know what? I can't remember who said this, but in politics there are no coincidences. If something happens, it's because it was planned and it's connected. So the problem that we have in our thinking, unfortunately, and that's the way we're taught in school as well, is to dissociate. Yep. We're dissociating. Okay, we're putting everything in boxes, and then it's easier to define it that way. What we have to relearn is our faculty of combining information, understanding the connections, understanding the interrelated nature of information, all information. Because we're living in a world that is ultimately connected, okay, even more so than we were before. So if something happens, chances are it will affect something else, and so on and so forth. And it's odd, to say the least, that in this particular region of the world, now something like this is happening, a military coup. Can we expect more? Was sorry, I forget the number, 317, right?
370.
370, sorry, 370. Was it some kind of, I don't know, a catalyst? Was it something that, started it? I don't know.
There's already a book and a movie out now.
Is there?
Yep,
Really?
There is, yep.
Oh,
this week,
man,
both announced.
That's fast. That's fast.
Too
soon? No.
Do you know what? In the chat room, I have to say, remember, this radio show it's live. It is a collaborative experience between the listeners. If you're listening and you're not, joining in, besides listening, I know it's late in some places, but jump on your PC or your smartphone, jump into the chat room at freedomslips.com. Jer Bear has just, he's also suggested, which we forgot to mention, when Benghazi. Now, that's an awful state of affairs where, the government knew it was going to happen, let it happen, and people died. Their own people. It sounds like Pearl Harbor, doesn't it, Mickey? It sounds very atypical of, say, like the US government. Is to become involved in something that, remember that famous quote, don't waste a good opportunity.
Exactly. So even if they didn't plan it, and this is really the crux of what Dave is saying, even if a government didn't plan something, capitalize as much as you can on it. Capitalize, capitalize. Having said that, if you look at, again, I have to give you this example because it's the most pertinent there's ever. It's 9/11. You know that all the people that benefited, I mean, there's just too many people that benefited. And too many things that went their way because of this one incident.
That's right.
I mean, if it were just a coincidence, and there was truly 19, Middle Eastern men, mostly from Saudi Arabia, armed with box cutters that actually managed to perpetrate this crime, by themselves, from a planned in a cave in Afghanistan and all these wonderful things. If that were truly the case, then the U.S. government at the time took the most advantage of it ever could. I mean, it was they couldn't have asked for more. Don't forget, it was a very unpopular government, okay? And it was it was shocking. In fact, the inauguration is usually a slow affair. They drive up in their limo in Washington I think it's to Congress. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So they drive up. It's usually a leisurely drive. When Bush drove up for this particular inauguration, this is the second one we're talking about. That was awarded by the Supreme Court, I think it was. Anyway, the point is, he had to rush through. There was a cordon of security guys, Secret Service guys around the car, and people were very, very unhappy. Okay, so we're not talking about a government that people were very much behind at all. It was the government. Sorry, no, it's first term. Sorry, my mistake. First term. Okay. That's when it was awarded by the Supreme Court. With the hanging chits, we all remember that debacle in Florida. Now, so you see that it would have been astonishing if it was truly a coincidence, which I don't think it wasn't. But that brings me to something else, and I really need to fledge this in for you guys here. Because we're living in a system of things that we accept to be the truth. We accept that society is a certain way. We accept that we're born, and we go to school, and we find a job, get married, have kids, eventually retire and die. And we work, throughout our lives and, to be productive members of society, whatever that means. So somebody I would have thought that somebody would come along and question that. I mean, really? Why do you live that way? Why? Okay, really? So you work in the same job all your life, and then you retire when you're 65. Your life is pretty much over. You spend a few years in the sun if you're lucky enough, and then you die. Yes, right. But the rich, the really rich, the people in power, they do pretty much whatever they want, right? And in fact, the law doesn't even bother them. Is that the way it is? You go, yeah, well, that's just the way it is. So we accept it because we've been from youth, from childhood onwards, we've been taught that is the way we are. This is our society. This is life. This is civilization. Wrong.
It's a construct.
Can I give you an example? Yes, it's a construct, Dave. 100%. It's the box we live in. And I want to give you one simple example as to why that way of life that we perceive to be true is not. My favorite people in the world are the Amish, okay, for various reasons. And I don't mean this in a flippant way. I have a lot of respect for those guys. I might not share their religious convictions, but I do share their way of life, which is entirely pacifist. So they don't kill, they don't get in arguments, they don't drink, but they own the land communally. Okay, wherever they are, especially in the States specifically, they own the land communally. They work it together. If you are coming of age and you're a man and you wish to marry a woman, you get together, you do that, and then you wish to build a house. So you know what you do? You get all your friends, all your buddies together, and they raise the house, they raise the barn. It's all in a day's work, and there's no mortgage, there is no indebtedness to the banks. Everybody works. Everybody works. Everybody has a skill or skills. You are in fact self-sufficient. You grow your own food. You can build your own house. You make your own furniture, so on, so on. So on. So that is actually not a bad way of life, is it? We make fun of the Amish. In fact, the Amish should make fun of us because we live the insane life. They live the sane life. And what is at the root of all of this? Why do we live the way we do? We are in fact wage slaves for the most part. We think it is okay to pay off a house over the course of 30 years. 30 years. I'll give you an example. My parents came to Australia 25 years ago. The house they bought was worth $100,000. That's how much they paid. $100,000, give or take a few, right? $100,000. Today, that house, 25 years, is worth $750,000. I can tell you that the wages have not gone up 7.5 times. Okay, I guarantee it. Okay, nonetheless, there we are. And Sydney in Australia is maybe an extreme case, but it is similar in other parts of the world. Of course, it is exactly opposite in some parts of America where your property is worth exactly nothing. which is incorrect as well. So how is it that we have a system that is so plainly unfair, so plainly skewed for the few that not only control the system, they also made up the rules for the others. Then the rules aren't for them to follow, they're for us to follow. And the very basis of the system is the theme or the of this show and coming shows, because there's no way we're going to finish it today. It is the money system. The money system we all live under. Yeah. We all accept as real, as true. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the two cornerstones of our money system are fiat money, and we'll explain what that is, and the fractional reserve lending system. Those are the two cornerstones of our prison.
Don't get me started on fractional.
Exactly,
lending.
right?
Yeah.
Now Dave here is a very smart guy. let me tell you about Dave. And I met him, this is now 14 some years ago at a place of work, and we hit it off immediately. And he worked very hard all his life. I noticed, because we worked in the same industry, and for a number of years we worked together, and I still know what he does, and he puts in the hours. And he has been building his house for a number of years, haven't you, Dave?
Yes, I have.
Now, and he builds it, and he actually, I mean, I'm not saying he's rich, he's not rich. I mean, I'd say, he's working hard, and his wife works. And
we're on the treadmill, just like everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're on the treadmill. And he has been building his house over the course of years. And it's a great house. It's a beautiful house. And yet he will spend most of his, I guess, strong years, his fruitful years, his golden years, not golden years, his most productive years, paying off that house. And working in jobs that he may or may not like. Obviously we all hope for work that we enjoy. Most of us aren't granted that privilege. But if you are, then you're lucky. Most of us don't have that. So it is now okay to not, well, waste is a strong word. But it is, though. You're wasting a lot of your time at work. Mm-hmm. You're at work for a minimum of 8 to 10 hours in most Western societies, right? A day. Yeah. In some countries it's 6 days. In others it's 5. Some countries will require you to work 7 days and several jobs just to live. Especially in the States, where you got minimum wage that is so low that you can actually not survive on it. Okay. And again, we have all accepted this as true. We've all accepted it as something that we should live this way. This is right. This is a good way to live. No, it's not. It is not. This way of life is not a good way of life. We are living in now what I term, it is feudal capitalism. Mm-hmm. Okay. What do I mean by that? Now, Dave, this is what I mean by that. In the feudal system, you were bound to your land that was owned by your feudal overlord, a baron, a prince, some kind of other duke or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Esquire, sir. Correct, right? And you were bound to that land, and you would have to work that land for your tithe lord. Okay, this is the guy who actually owns it. And it's okay. You can do that, and you pay your taxes to him, and you can do whatever else you want with the produce that you managed to raise on your land. And for the most part, if you get a good feudal overlord, if you get a bad feudal overlord, he'll bleed you, and you will barely survive. That's the feudal system, right? Mm-hmm. Now we no longer live in the feudal system, and we've come out of that, but we are still tied to our jobs. Okay, we're not tied to land anymore, which was a fairly real thing. Now we're tied to our skill set and the labor we sell to our feudal overlords, our bosses, CEOs, and members of the board, whatever it might be, mm-hmm. the guys that don't actually do any work. And so there we are. We are now stuck, and we are wage slaves. And the more you buy into this world, the more you buy into it, the more you buy, in fact. Right?
You're indebting yourself into it.
Correct. So mm-hmm. so you accept that you have a mortgage. That's your choice. Mortgage. Mm-hmm. Mortgage. Mors mortis is Latin for death. Okay? There's no coincidence that a mortgage is called a mortgage. It's unto death. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, Dave? It's unto death. That's what it is. It's insane if you think about it. Analyze the language always. And for most of us, not for most of us, but for a number of us, I think we are now quite okay to indebt our children as well.
In Singapore, they have family mortgages. because the real estate is so expensive. They expect you won't be able to pay it off in 30 years, so it's 90 years. They know you won't live 90 years, so you'll be handing the debt of that place to your children.
You are exactly right. And that seems reasonable. I look at my daughter, just born, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna load you down with debt until, in fact, she won't even see the end of that debt, right? If it were for 90 years, right? Let's say. I mean, maybe she would, just then. But then you have to upgrade. But you know what? After 90 years, guess what? Your lease runs out and falls back to the government. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. If you think about it, the system is set up in such a fashion that is beautiful to behold, horrible to live in, but you have to admire the subtle genius of it, right? And we're going to discuss the Rothschilds, of course, going forward, and the banking system, fractional lending, and also the role of the goldsmith and whatnot. But essentially, go on, yeah.
So Meki, one of the things that I was talking to people, because I knew the topic, so I was talking to some people about this during the week, and I'll tell you, the thing that came up over and over again from different people was the invention of the typewriter, which it changed the way the lords employed people. So in England, 200 years ago, everyone was in abject poverty, except for all of these insanely rich people that had manor houses. And they would have some 20 staff pandering over them. But they would pay them almost nothing. Almost nothing. Like, it's not slave wages, because you had to pay them something. But they would have all these staff, and they'd be waiting over them hand and foot. And the invention of the typewriter was such that these people that was their only employment, had an option. Their first option was to possibly learn typing and be able to get out of that cycle. It was an actual technological innovation that got them out of that, where they could then, their first mechanical typewriter, and that's an extraordinary concept.
Yes.
That no longer did they have to slave away and work on these farms for these people or whatever it was they were doing, that they could start to become a little more educated and start to step up. But this is that the great divide between the rich and the poor that we continue to talk about it in. And if any government decides to increase the gap between the rich and the poor, then they're going backward. They're going to that histocracy. Freudian slip. Aristocracy. That they believe that should exist and should be thriving, and yet the middle class is the people who drive the economy, and without them, by de-skilling them and creating this a greater gap between the top and the bottom, are you really doing any service to anyone? No.
See, you've just mentioned something very, very important, Dave. This is exactly what we're seeing in all of the Western nations, all of them, and some of the Eastern nations as well. I'm not talking about the Southern nations so much, excuse me, because they're not quite on the same development level as the others. They're still in growth mode, and the poor far outweigh the middle class. But in every nation where you have got a sizable middle class, Germany, UK, America, Australia, even Japan and Singapore and so forth, you see now a direct attack on that middle class in various ways. Job outsourcing to cheaper labor sources. The devaluing of property, like we've seen in the States. Also the devaluing of currency and the de-skilling. And this means the educational system is getting worse. The de-skilling of the youth, and in fact I guess the general hopelessness you're transmitting to that youth, because even if you do go to school and then you go to university or you do a trade or whatever it might be, there may not be any work for you. And in Australia, I listened to a report just the other day. I think there are about 8,000 nurses that graduate in Australia every year, and 5,000 of those can't find work right now. 5,000 nurses. And nurses, and we do need nurses. I've spent some time in hospitals now, with my child and myself having had a few things to do, and I can tell you that those nurses are providing a fantastic service, but I don't think there are enough of them. Okay, but now again, once again, we are cutting, and we're cutting from the public purse, and we're cutting from the people that are earning money, and we're offshoring the jobs. We are seeing a shrinking of the middle class and the growth of the underclass, and the gap, as Dave has pointed out, between the underclass and the upper class, right, the haves, if you will, is getting larger and larger, and that's pretty much the view across the world. And you can look at anyone, any analyst, any commentator, anybody who has got anything to say about anything, and they will agree with that statement. We are creating a massive underclass. Now, again, I believe, and you should go back to the hypothesis, there's a method to this madness, because it is unsustainable. We cannot sustain this kind of economic fascism, because it is only the few. Economic feudalism even. It's only the few that will benefit here and always have. See, when money is lost, and this is an interesting thing about the money market, we'll talk about that as well as we go into the actual topic for today. Money is never lost. It doesn't evaporate, okay? Let's say there's a stock market crash. I don't care which one, right? And there's people say, oh, we lost billions. No, you, Mr. Little Investor, lost billions. Yes, you know, thousands of millions of you. But those billions of dollars, they went into someone else's pockets. Make no mistake, we're talking about a shift of wealth. And the biggest shift of wealth we saw from Main Street to Wall Street fairly recently when the American public was allowed, given the privilege, to bail out the bankers.
Yeah, I love that. And where did the money come from? The people.
Boom.
Where did it go?
Right.
To the bankers. Why would it go to the bankers who failed you in the first place? Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Capitalist. It's fascism. It's fascism. And capitalism is dead. No longer do we live in a capitalist. We've said this before. I'll say it again. We are now living in a fascist society, meaning the big business and the industrial complex, military-industrial complex, in fact, owns everything, and they decide who's in power. They decide who gets elected. You know, they globally even they decide what's going on, and underlying all of that is the banking system. An insidious little thing. And we're going to talk about the banking wars of the 19th century, which you might not have heard of in America. We're going to talk about World War I, World War II. There's a fantastic website I uncovered in our research that goes into the history of money, which we will not share with you today, but the next show when we pick this theme up again, we may have some guests in between. But let me just say that all is not well. All is not well. Okay, we are living in a system of things that is skewed against us. If you're listening to if you're the elite right now that's listening in, or you've got some Asians listening, I'm not talking about you. You're good. Okay,
good for you guys. You know, just keep doing your job.
You're fine, and you're doing a fine job of keeping the status quo as it is.
We're not the people you're looking for.
Right. But let me say to you this: it is not as it should be, and we're not living the life that we could be living. Dave, what are your thoughts on any of this? I mean, you've lived it, we've lived it. I mean, but you're a thinker, you know, so you think about these things. What do you see that maybe other people can't see?
Well, you know, I'll bring your attention to I saw there were on television, actual TV, once again the ABC, and they were interviewing workers in China who were at a jeans factory. I won't say the brand. The jeans factory themselves were manufacturing thousands and thousands. They had, you know, a full factory full of people doing the work. No machinery. Machinery to a very lesser extent. This was mechanical, usually hand-pulled levers and things like that. Lots of steam. You know, it would look like the 1200s. I swear. Right? It was awful in there. The conditions are terrible. It was light and airy, and the people that were doing the work, you know, these we focused on during the show. They focused on the output stage, not the cutting of the material or anything, but the output stage. So they've created the jeans, and these guys and girls were ironing the jeans flat after they've been manufactured, and this is the last step before them being crated up. And they had to do one per minute. One pair of jeans per minute under the iron. Per person. Yeah?
Wow.
And
that's wow. Okay.
It's staggering amount. And this guy's arm, you should see it. He's done nothing from probably when he was 10 years old. I don't know when he started. They didn't ask him the question. But his arm was only built. The other arm wasn't built up. Only one arm was built to move this iron. Yeah? all his tendons in his hand, everything, the whole arm had adapted to be able to run this iron backwards and forwards over the jeans. And the interviewer said, "Can I have a go?" And the guy looked at the supervisor like, "It's not going to come out of my wages, right?" You know, that look of desperation, like, "What? You do what?" You know?
Yeah.
So the guy has a go and goes, "I just forget it. That's just too hard." And the guy jumps straight back on. He's powering through it. He gets through it, right? And they asked the supervisor, "Look, that's pretty stressful work. Like, that's physically demanding. At the end of, say, a year, can any of these people here maybe move, you know, do you do job rotation? Can the guy say, "Can I go do pockets from now on? Give pockets a go? Yeah? You know, sew those on?" And the lady goes, "No." This is the supervisor. "No, are you kidding?" Like, it was the way she was speaking. And it's like, "No, they do that. All they're employed. The whole time they're employed, they'll only be doing that task. That's what they're employed for." Like, what? I was astounded. Like, she was that same mentality. No way I'm not even going to give them even talking about this is almost a breach of my policy with the company. Don't infer that they can move around. And I'm never going to let them have an opportunity outside of that. They earn $1 a day. What are you kidding? Right? So I couldn't believe I worked for a union, yeah? And unions think about the effect in the contract between you and your employer. When you agree to work somewhere, it's a mutually beneficial agreement. You choose to work there, and they choose to pay you to work there doing X. If you don't do X, well, you're breaking your agreement. And I just thought, what on earth has the world come to for it to be this bad an experience? And then I started looking back and I said, well, actually, we came out of that experience into a much better world where the big businesses were restricted in the amount they could exploit their workers to become fair. Everyone's heard about fair wages for people doing the same job. People should be paid the same thing. But I'm astounded that we're getting pushed back to that because, you know, the people who control everything would prefer to control more of it. I don't think it's very fair. So I was mortified by it. I'm under the understanding that that's sort of where we're going again. All of the countries seem to be leveling themselves out, so there's none with more benefit or opportunity than any other. They're leveling out the playing field here. That's what I see globally occurring. And Meki's right when he said that we're turning into not a fascist state, but a fascist planet with these ruling overlords intending on reducing our ability to get to their status. So, look, that's where I stand on it. I don't know. I would like some people in the chat room to flick me some comments, maybe. So, if you could, throw me some suggestions. I'd like to see it. Look, we're coming to nearly to the top of the hour. What I'd like for you to do is, while we're at our break, if you could, go to the chat room and push the donate button on the left-hand side if you could. That would be awesome. Once you've pushed the donate button, message me in the chat room and tell me how much you are able to donate, because this show runs on donations. Not to me, not to Meki, but to the infrastructure that runs the whole show in the background. Yeah? It goes to the station owner, it goes to pay for the servers, for the bandwidth, and for all of the licensing being able to be broadcast on iHeart and Live 365 for that matter. So I'm going to donate $10 like I try to every single week when I'm on deck. So if you could, jump in and do that. Meki, I've talked us all the way through to the break. If you could take it for the next few minutes, please.
Sir, and I apologize for the simply getting off here for some reason. And what we have, I agree with Dave here as well, of course. This is very important. It's listener-supported radio, so please do give what you can. I still have to make good on my promise. I've been in a financial hole a little bit for the last few weeks. Before we go though, and before we have the history of what happened, will be how okay, shed some light on consistencies or half-truths that you were told, because the military system is not what the has been explained to you, right? But for the most part, all money is there's no gold or there's no anything. Faith.
Yes, I'm back again. I'm sorry, everyone.
Beautiful.
It seems as though Meki's having a little bit of problem with his connection and audio. I'm sorry for everyone who's hearing the same thing. Meki, it seems like you got dropped off the air there a bit. Yeah, it doesn't sound good. Oh well. Hopefully Meki can reboot his machine maybe at the end. Yeah. So I'll maybe Meki can, during the break, we're right at the top of the hour. We'll be there in a minute, and maybe Meki can reboot his machine in the middle. I'd like to thank everyone who's a newcomer to Shiny Side Out, who's possibly come in through YouTube, one of our archives, and then decided to get on board with the live show. Thank you so much. And to all those people who email me during the week and just talk to me on our Facebook page as well, thanks so much. Everyone who leaves comments on our YouTube channel, please do. I'm not going to stop you from commenting, and I don't mind which way you comment, whether it's pro or against. It's for or against. I don't really mind. You know what? It's discussions are discussions, and you've got your viewpoints. So, Meki, it sounds like you're back with us. No, Meki's not back with us again. Poor Meki. I seem to have a bit better bandwidth than he does, but we're right at the top of the hour. So what I'm going to do is, if you could donate, please, while we're during the break, and it'll be all good, yeah? So, I hope you're enjoying today's show. We've got some interesting slides in the slide deck, which might it makes the thing a little better. If we're talking about something and you don't know what the live stream is, I'm just going to paste it back once again back. Oh, I can't paste it back in. I did paste it a while back, and I'll paste it back in at the top of the hour. And we've got about 40 seconds left or less. So, also, if anyone has any more information about MH370, please flick it through to me. I am doing a continual broadcast of this from week to week to see if it's gone anywhere. Now, please don't for 1 second think it's old news. It's not. It hasn't been solved, and therefore, I think that it's still worth a shot. Maybe that thing that came down over Russia wasn't the Russian missile, and it wasn't aliens that shot it down either. I think it was American kinetic energy weapon. But anyway, we'll see you at the other side of the break. We'll disconnect and come back in, and hopefully everything's going to be fine.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. If you plan to call in and speak with one of our hosts, please turn down your radio and separate yourself from any background noise and wait for the area code to be called on before you speak. And don't forget, Revolution Radio freedomslips.com is listener supported. So stop by the homepage, freedomslips.com, visit the site support area to help support the host you're listening to's airtime. Thank you. Revolution Radio freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, as Hawk says, the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. Since it's listener-funded radio and you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button. I hope everyone had the 3D glasses on for that one. It's on the site support page on the left-hand side in the chat room. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. Yes, help support our airtime. I'd like to say hello, like I did before the break, to all the new listeners we have today. We're glad you're on board, and we hope we do more than simply entertain you. We hope we make you think. We're halfway through show number 17. And we're talking about, well, we're almost talking about, we're disappointed, but we're talking about fiat currency and fractional reserve lending. But I have a simple announcement, Becky, if you may, about Solaris, Blue Raven. Awesome host. She's on before us. And from what I understand, anyone who is, if you could meet her if you wanted to, she will be at the Mind Control Summit. That's where she's going to be next week. So if you're able to get to it, I'd suggest going down there if you're near Vegas, if you want a 4-hour drive or so from LA, some time out, you wanted some actual oxygen, go down to Las Vegas. You want the real sun. If you want to see the real sun, go to Vegas. And I lived in Los Angeles, so I know what it's like. Go down there and you know, you might be able to meet her. She's a lovely lady, and she's at the Mind Control Summit. So, Meki, I hate to say it, but that just seemed like a DOS attack.
Yeah, look, obviously it's the wrong topic, and we've had this before, guys. I mean, we had 117 shows, and I think only 3 or 4, in my opinion, have been sabotaged by by either denying us service or somehow affecting our lines. And make no mistake, it is Skype, but you know that means people can, in fact, screw with it. Now, it is the wrong topic if you don't want anything happening to you, which is, you know, I understand that. But I believe, and Dave believes, that it's important that the people, all of you, understand exactly how our system works and why it is the single biggest fraud, flim-flam show, okay, long con, that has ever been perpetrated on the human race, okay? Because that's what it is. It is a gigantic con, okay, our monetary system. And it's really just a gamble with people's lives. And you're right, look, it was maybe a DOS attack. So if you do lose me, Dave can take it. And the notes are there, and we've I think compiled how many shown? 15, 40, I think 40 or 18 pages today. So we will no way will we get through all of that. So it is a cycle we're starting here once again, and this is around the monetary system.
We're doing a second show for sure, and maybe a third, depending on how much it builds over the next week or two. Meki, I'm sure I've just pasted the live stream link into the chat room. Also, if you can jump into that, we'll be maybe talking about some of these slides that come up, or they'll be relevant to you. So. To improve that experience. And at the moment, there's a beautiful slide there from the deck, and it says, "Bankers, the house always wins." Yes,
that's so true. So that's really, in fact, that still is taken from a very important movie. It's taken from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
That's right.
And the gentleman you see there is the banking mogul, if you will, of his hometown. And if you haven't seen the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I urge you to go and see it. It is as relevant. Jimmy Stewart, correct. It is as relevant and alarming now as it was then. Okay, and back then I guess Hollywood had a bit more backbone than it does today, because it shows you exactly how it works, and it tells you exactly why it is a bad idea that the press and media is owned by a few rich people. Okay, so do it's black and white. Don't let that put you off. They dress funny.
Do yourself a favor and go see it. If it's on Turner Classic Movies, pop it on.
Yeah. It is probably one of the most explosive political movies that you can ever see. That was made for entertainment. Okay, so do help yourself and see it. Now, okay, look, let's without further ado, we do want to cover at least the fiat system today. So what is that, Dave? Like, look, we give you a bit of an overview around the fiat system and what the word actually means. So the global monetary system that we're living in is called a fiat system, in which money, okay, paper, plastic, whatever, is a storage medium for purchasing power and a substitute for barter. That's very important. Each dollar bill, euro, yen, gold, ingot, or whatever currency you choose enables you to buy things as the need or want arises, thus making the barter system, you know, where you trade one service or good for another obsolete, or at least for the most part. There's still black economies, and certainly in large parts of the world, you still do barter because you just don't make enough money in your regular work, or you might not be part of the economic system. If you're a subsistence farmer, for instance, chances are you cannot take part in the economic system, and you will barter for your mere survival. It also has gotten, for the most part, gotten rid of our hunter-gathering societies, right? So essentially, in the olden days, when it all began, we hunted and we gathered, meaning for the most part, we didn't really hunt, we scavenged, okay, because everybody was stronger and meaner than us. But we gathered, berries and nuts and so forth, and tubers and whatever we could find as food. And we seem to have lived a very leisurely life. Scientists say that we spent 5 hours a week doing hard manual labor. 5 hours a week. And that's how our bodies are designed, how our mind is designed, to do 5 hours of hard work a week. Most of the rest was spent in just doing what we wanted to do, for the most part, living in a hunter-gathering society. Then, and that, of course, engendered bartering as well, because, maybe you were a really good hunter, which means you could then, barter your kill for fish, because there might be a really good fisherman. So we understand the bartering.
A specialized or specialist in the industry.
Yeah, but the key thing is you still did something useful. Okay, a hunter-gathering and bartering is an economic system which forces you to do something that is valuable to everybody, or to a large number of people. Otherwise, you are excluded from the bartering system. That makes sense, right? If you just do nothing, like a bureaucrat or a politician, right? You don't actually do anything that you can barter for something else. I'm a politician. I'll tell you how to live your life. Oh, I'll give you a fish for that. No, I don't think so. Okay. Now, so what money enabled us to do was to develop, enterprises at large, like businesses, and societies could now establish sub-specialization. Okay. So and the economists see it as a more dynamic way into the future, and of course sub-specialization means that you do a very specific task within the economy at large. In fact, whatever you do in the economy might not actually have an output. You might not actually produce anything, right? The biggest or the best example for that is a stockbroker on Wall Street. That doesn't do anything, right? That adds anything to anyone. It just he only lines pockets with money. That's what they do. They don't actually produce anything. They don't make anything better. They don't build boats. They don't go hunting. They just gamble with your money.
It's not.
That's what they do.
There's nothing that they do that is physically produced. Yes.
Correct. So now, before there was money, anyone who owned land produced their own necessities and traded the surplus with other people for things they needed. That was, for the most part, true independence. Okay? Because this is where we're trying to get to. That when you get off the grid, you're trying to live off the grid. That's exactly what you're trying to get to. Being self-sufficient. Okay? Or at least in a position where you can barter with others in your neighborhood or immediate vicinity to enable you to live a good life. Now many changed that. By its inherent ability to store purchasing power. All of a sudden you're given a thing, like be it a banknote or a coin or a promissory note, it doesn't really matter. All of a sudden you have this thing, and that you'd store purchasing power in that thing. Okay, so you could now specialize. Okay, you were a good wheat farmer. Okay, you specialize in wheat. You buy all the equipment, hire workers, and so forth, and that's all you do. You just wheat farm. That's the only thing you worry about. You don't have to worry about raising pigs or whatever else, because you can sell your wheat. Okay, so markets and central banks, which are both privately owned entities, and for the most part not regulated. Okay, for the most part not regulated. Then value the relative worth of the paper, which is the currency. So that's what markets and central banks do. And they base it on the perception of how a particular country is governing itself, the current state of its economy, and the effects the interplay of those two factors have on interest rates. Interest rates, the biggest fraud ever. The biggest fraud ever. I think interest rates, and in fact, you know what? If you're a Christian and if you're a Muslim, you will find that usury is a sin. It's a mortal sin. What is usury? What is usury? What does it mean? Well, usury is charging interest. Okay? That's what it is. And it's a mortal sin. The moneylenders were hated in the Old Testament. Read it. Have a look. So how is it that we venerate these bankers these days? They make billion-dollar profits out of thin air. I'm not a religious man myself, but I know that many of you are, and I respect that. Read your Bible, have a look, and see what it says about usury. Now, most of the world's money is fiat money, okay? Meaning it is accepted as money because a government says it is money, it is legal tender. And this is the important bit. The public has enough confidence and faith in the money's ability to serve as a storage medium for purchasing power. That's all it is. It's really just a... In fact, the Wolf of Wall Street movie...
yes.
The guy is on the boat, and the FBI agents are just leaving the boat after a discussion, and he goes, "Yeah, in my pocket I've got a year's salary. You know what I call these?" And he pulls out, a big wad of dollar bills. Fun coupons. I call them fun coupons. And he throws, $100 bills in the air, and they're fun coupons. That's what they are, essentially, right? Now, a fiat system is based on the government's mandate that the paper currency it prints is legal tender for making financial transactions. Legal tender means that the money is backed by the full faith and credit of the government that issues it. In other words, the government promises to be good for it. Okay, this is important. Okay, especially today, because it doesn't have any other backing. The government tells you, well, this is $1 and this dollar is worth something. Okay, Mr. Government, thank you, I believe you. And most of us do. Why? Because that's the system we're born into. We were brought up with that system since we were infants. We don't know any better. It's, of course, BS. Right? It doesn't actually mean anything. The dollar that you're holding, or the $10, or even the $1,000, is just a piece of paper or plastic these days, which actually does not have any intrinsic value.
Exactly.
None. Zero. It is make-believe.
Yeah, we're not talking about coins, gold coins. We're not talking about, the Spanish bullion.
Yeah, but even that, and I want to be very clear here. Even diamonds and gold and any kind of coinage that might be considered a rare metal or whatever does not have any intrinsic value either. And what I mean by that is you can't eat it. Okay, you have to have other people accept that it has value. So there has to be a communal agreement that whatever you use to exchange, other than goods and services, and by that I mean, if you give a fish to a shaman who can heal you of the flu, that you're exchanging something he can eat for something that makes you better, right? You haven't actually paid him with gold. And if you give him gold, you go, well, this is nice, shiny yellow metal, but what am I going to do with it? Now, we've spoken about gold.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but in its monatomic state, of course, gold is a whole different property, and that's... I don't want to go into this too much, but essentially there is intrinsic value in gold, but we don't know, most of us don't know what that actually is. Look up our shows on monatomic gold, Food of the Gods, and so forth, and the farm in Arizona, and you may find out something that you hadn't known up to this point. But again, you must make an agreement that something is worth something. Okay, so now fiat is the opposite of commodity money. Okay, fiat money is the opposite of commodity money, which is money that is based on a valuable commodity. Okay, and that was used in the past, and sometimes the commodity itself was used as money. Now we're talking about the gold standard, for example. Let's say gold. We all agree gold is worth a lot of money. Great, there it is, gold. This now has intrinsic value. We think it does, at least. There is this gold, and we know now it does actually. But again, monatomic gold, different topic.
But Mackie, it used to be like you could have grain, which is a feudal furs or something. Yeah,
totally. So whatever your country produced, for example, or whatever your dukedom or fiefdom or your kingdom or whatever was produced, that it could be used as a method to back up your currency. Let's say you're a wheat producer, right? Or furs or whatever. You produce 1,000 tons of wheat every year, and your currency that you use in your country is based on that wheat as a value of exchange. So you say, well, this dollar bill is worth 10 bushels of wheat, for example. That is what is called commodity money. So your money is actually backed up by something that has value. You keep it somewhere in Fort Knox, as it were.
The petrodollar.
The petrodollar, yeah. Right? So or Fort Knox, right? So we're going to talk about Fort Knox as the show goes on, and trust me, you probably don't want to know about it. But essentially, your money is backed up by something that people agree has value. And in fact, sometimes has real value, like grain. That's valuable. You can eat it. Okay, so that is commodity money. We are no longer in that world. We no longer live in the commodity money world. We live in the fiat world. Now, what does fiat mean? The term derives from the Latin fiat, and that means let it be done, it shall be. Okay, let it be done, it shall be. So meaning well, we are now giving value to this dollar, euro, yen, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we make it so. That's really what fiat means. Now, interestingly, excuse me, the first use of fiat money has been recorded in China around 1000 of the Common Era, and since then it has been used intermittently by various countries and also concurrently with commodity currencies. But fiat in the end won out because, well, you don't have to hold anything valuable. You know, if you got a fiat currency, it's great. Now, what's the definition of it? Fiat money has been defined as any money declared by a government to be legal tender, or state-issued money which is neither convertible by law to any other thing, nor fixed in value in terms of any objective standard. Okay, that's important. Intrinsically, this is the most important right now. Intrinsically valueless money used as money because of government decree.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it again. Intrinsically valueless money used as money because of government decree. Okay, that's what fiat money is. That's what we have in our pockets. Now, while gold or silver-backed representative money entails the legal requirement that a bank of issue redeem it in fixed weights of gold or silver, fiat's money's value is unrelated to the value of anything physical. It is, like I said, make-believe, fantasy. It's hocus pocus. It doesn't exist. Okay, you can't go to the bank and say, "Oh, I want my $10 in gold, please." They'll look at you. Yeah, good luck to you.
and obviously they won't give it to you.
No, in fact, it's worse. It's worse, and we will come to the actual detail of that later. But if everybody went to the bank today, everybody in the world went to the bank today and wanted to withdraw their money, all of it, there's not enough money in physical existence. Okay, I want to say it again. There's not enough money in physical existence today to cover all of the money that you think you have.
Okay? Mackie, there's a term for that, isn't it? It's called
a bank run.
A run on the bank. That's right.
Yeah, and that is, and we're going to come to that as well. That the bank run is the single reason why all the regulations and audits and rules and laws exist around the banking system, to prevent a bank run. Okay, that's the only reason. Otherwise, the banks wouldn't care less about a bank run.
Mackie, wait. So you were going to get to it, but why would I, as a bank, worry if I had 100% of the money that my people, my customers had given me? If I owned all that money that they gave me, why would a bank run scare me? It shouldn't scare me.
Well, see, this is when we talk about, and this is now we're talking about the fractional reserve lending, right? So, and we're going to get it, but very briefly, because I do want to cover it in today's show. Very briefly, guys. Let's say a bank has you go to the bank and give it $100. There it is. Boom. You put $100 in the bank. The bank is now allowed to give out $1,000. Okay. In fact, in America, I don't know if you know this. In America, you only have to hold 3% of what you lend out. 3%. Okay. So, but let's go with the fractional reserve lending here. So I've given 100. The bank can now write checks for $900 that don't exist. It's illusion upon illusion. It is smoke. It is. In fact, the more I think about it, the more horrendous it is.
I know.
Okay. It's because, and this is where interest rates come in. I'll come to that in a little while. But so essentially, there's real money, $100, let's call it. But now the bank has created an extra $900 it gives to other guys. So those guys can now deposit that as well in other banks. Okay. Let's say I got $100 from that bank as a loan, out of the 900 that we create out of Dave's original 100. So I go to a bank, boom, here it is, $100, put it into the bank. That bank then goes, this is great, and creates $900. Whoosh!
From thin air.
It's financial magic. It's genius. And you know what? It is the biggest con there has ever been. It is the biggest con there has ever been. And essentially, the entire system rests on the fact that they hope that there won't be any bank runs. They hope that people will never go to the bank and demand all of their money. And in fact, if you've watched It's a Wonderful Life, this Christmas movie, that's exactly what happens in that movie. A run is created. Remember? There was a big stock market crash, but he stayed in business because this is again Jimmy Stewart movie. He was. Yeah. You have to watch those movies and actually watch them with new eyes, right? New eyes.
Yeah.
So he stayed in business because he used his honeymoon money to stay in business and pay out the people that were asking for their money back, right? Because if you can't, as a bank, pay out all of your, money to the people that you owe, you will be deregistered. You will cease to exist as a bank. You must be able to pay the people out, okay? And they hate that.
There's actually been a couple of banks that have declared. Now I don't remember which one it was now, but one of them changed their banking rules to say that you weren't allowed to transfer money from their bank to another bank in foreign money.
Yep.
To a particular percentage of what you had stored with them. Mm-hmm. So to prevent a bank run in transference of money from one bank to another, that's pretty criminal. That's the first time that's happened that I've seen.
Yeah. Now think about that, guys. Right? It's your money. It is your money.
You can do whatever you
should
want.
Be able to get it. Yeah. Now. But so they tried whatever they can to provide those bank runs, right? Mm-hmm. Not always successfully, and sometimes it's engineered that way. And then we're going to talk about the big stock market crashes as well, and I will give you the real history. So what we're going to cover today is the official history and the official definition of terms. And then if we have time, we'll start on the unofficial history and terms. But that's probably going to be on the next show.
Yeah, part two.
Now, as far as fiat currencies are concerned, even a coin, for example, containing metal may be considered fiat currency if its face value is defined by law as different from its market value as metal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, these days we really have very few copper coins or silver coins in circulation. There still are, and even gold coins. You know, you can certainly use them. You'd be foolish to do so because you should really hang on to it if you can, just in case. In fact, there's a story I'm going to share with you as part of the cycle around J.P. Morgan and those bankers, and how they converted all of their wealth to gold just before the big crashes. Ooh. Can you say conspiracy?
Wait, watch this go offline. And I wanted to also bring up the Germans' banking system.
Oh,
and they wanted visibility of that gold as well. So Mackie, the history. Do we cover off the treatment in economics?
No, I do want to quickly cover off the treatment, if I may. And this is the official definition of fiat currency. This is not something that Dave and I made up or some conspiracy fringe nuts did. This is the official. This is what it is. In monetary economics, fiat money is an intrinsically useless product used as a means of payment. In some micro-funded models of money, fiat money is created internally in a community, making feasible trades that would not otherwise be possible, either because producers and consumers may not anonymously write IOUs or because of physical constraints. But essentially, okay, it does not have any value, and this is accepted in the economy. This is accepted by economic theorists, right? Guys, wake up! Wake up!
So, Mackie, a strong point to this is if you've, been through a change of currency nominated by your government. So we went from imperial to metric. We went from the pounds to dollars. All of that old currency is worthless. It was worthless, for a set amount of time. They said you could move it from one currency to the next, but after that it was worthless. During some conflicts, government bonds became worthless. Those things, it's just a piece of paper or it's a coin with a stamp on it. It doesn't mean it has value, and that's the point we're hitting home with this. Yep, absolutely. It can be declared worthless on you.
Yeah. Oh, but this is really the danger, right? And what you're also faced with, of course, and this is slightly off topic, is runaway inflation, right? Where you have, let's say everybody agrees that $1 buys a can of Coke. I'm just making things up, not endorsing Coke here either, but everybody knows what it is. And then today this is how much it is, and then tomorrow, because you've got runaway inflation for various reasons, high unemployment, loss of confidence, it's worth $100 or 1,000 or $1 billion. In the Weimar Republic, and my grandparents lived through this, in the morning a loaf of bread would cost, I don't know, let's call it 10 Reichsmark. Okay, that was the currency. Okay, good. In the evening, you had to come with a wheelbarrow full of money to purchase a loaf of bread. Okay, they were printing that day. They were it was insane. And of course, the whole thing came back down to World War I and the Treaty of Versailles and the bleeding of Germany and so forth, and essentially destroying the economic system in Germany and paving, incidentally, the way for Hitler to come to power on the back of uncertainty and so forth. So it is all everything is related, guys. Okay, nothing ever happens in a vacuum, and runaway inflation is a means to shift political power and control systems of people, usually to the dismay and the demise. Yeah, absolutely, sir. Sorry, but we are digressing a little. Now we want to talk about the history. Now this is the official history. Again, this show, and potentially next show, we're going to share with you the official history of money, and then we're going to share with you the unofficial history, the actual history of money. So fiat money originated in the 11th century in China, as we mentioned, and it became widespread during the Yuan and the Ming dynasties. Okay, now that the Song dynasty was the first to issue paper money. It was called Jiaozi. That was around the 10th century, so 100 years later. Now although the notes were valued at a certain exchange rate for gold, silver, or even silk, the conversion was never allowed in practice. So even though there was some kind of a commodity currency here, you were not actually allowed to exchange it, making it a fiat currency, really. Now, the notes were initially redeemed to be redeemed after 3 years service, and to be replaced by new notes for a 3% service charge. But as more of them were printed, without notes being retired, inflation became evident. Now, what is inflation? Inflation is increase of the money supply in the economy. Okay, the more money you have, the less value it has. Mm-hmm. Okay, now this is a hard concept to understand, and interest rates are a direct culprit there as well, because you're creating more money out of nothing. Interest essentially is just like the $900 we had in our earlier example, is money out of nothing. So let's say the bank gives you $100, as the example earlier, and then you bank it with another bank, you know whatever you want, so they can create another 900. But you then have to pay the other bank back, right? So they gave you $100. You're not going to pay them back $100, right? Because the bank wants to make money, right? That's their sole purpose of existing. So it's given you $100, and then the interest rate, whatever it might be, determines how much you have to pay back. Usually it's double over the course of time. The longer you pay it back, the more you pay back. The quicker you pay it back, the less you pay back. It's very simple and straightforward, right? That's why credit cards are such a huge trap, massive, right? Because they charge like 20-30% interest, right, Dave? I mean, come on, this is insane. And the credit card debt that we have these days. So it charges you a lot of money. For $100 that you borrowed, for whatever purposes, you end up paying back around $200, depending on your interest rates. It could be more than that even, or slightly less as well. So that's where inflation comes in, because you've just paid back money that doesn't exist. Remember, we started off with $100 that existed, that was turned into $1,000, so $900 to give away to other people, and then that $100 that was given to someone else out of the $900 has doubled in value to the bank. Again, magic money out of thin air, interest. Okay, again, this is really, you have to really understand it, really get it, because it is killing us. Okay, it's killing the planet, it's killing all of us eventually. Now, okay, so the government in China made several attempts to support the paper by demanding taxes partly in currency and making other laws, but the damage had been done and the notes fell out of favor because inflation ran rampant. In successive dynasties, like the Yuan dynasty, for example, it was the first dynasty in China to use paper currency as the predominant circulating medium. Okay, the founder of the Yuan dynasty, the Kublai Khan, you may be familiar with him, issued paper money known as Chao in his reign. The original notes during the Yuan dynasty were restricted in area and duration as in the Song dynasty. So again, the notes would have an expiry date. They would be taken out of circulation.
Wow.
That still happens today. The money is burned. It's taken out after certain years of usage. Okay, that's still happening. In order that we keep, I guess, inflation in check.
They have to Mackie, in defense of the having paper money, they get damaged, and to keep the notes fresh, they must continually print money to replace that's trailing out the other end of life length of time. So I appreciate that part of it. And they track it by serial, so they know how old their money is.
Correct. I mean that's the key. Well, another reason is of course counterfeit, but one of the reasons to that you have serial numbers on money is so they can track it and they know when it's destroyed. Okay, so that's really important. Now, during the 13th century, Marco Polo, the intrepid traveler, described this fiat currency in his book, The Travels of Marco Polo, and this is what he said. All these pieces of paper are issued with as much solemnity and authority as if they were of pure gold or silver. And indeed, everybody takes them readily, for wheresoever a person may go throughout the great Khan's dominions, China, he shall find these pieces of paper current, and shall be able to transact all sales and purchases of goods by means of them just as well as if they were coins of pure gold. Now, you have to realize that for Marco Polo, this was astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are these promissory notes, these pieces of paper, which had no value whatsoever, but in China, again, was back then was pretty large as well, like it is today. And he found that people could just take these pieces of paper and trade them for goods and services. For European of the time, that was astonishing, because Europeans at the time had gold coinage and silver coinage, right? So, I mean, again, it's value that was agreed amongst everybody that gold and silver were having. But it had like a physical backing. I mean, paper itself is valueless. No? I mean, if you make the argument for gold and silver as precious metals, then that's not the case. So for Marco Polo, an astonishing state of affairs. Okay,
and he recognized them for what they were.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Pieces of paper with no intrinsic value.
Yeah, if Europeans at the time would have heard of this, and obviously they would have read his accounts, they would have shaken their head and go, "Really? That sounds crazy. What do you mean piece of paper? What? What if it burns?" So yeah, quite an alien concept to the European mind at the time. Now, enter tally sticks. Now, what are tally sticks? Which is a fair question. They were employed as fiat currency in medieval England when. Due to a gold shortage, Henry I initiated their use by the Exchequer, the Exchequer of UK, in around 1100 AD. Now, and all royal taxes had to be paid in those tally sticks. In 1661, Johann Palmstruch issued the first regular paper money in the West. Okay, under royal charter from the Kingdom of Sweden. Through a new institution, the Bank of Stockholm.
Wow.
Yep. By 1745, its paper money was inconvertible to specie, meaning to gold and silver, but acceptance was mandated by the government, so that makes it a fiat currency.
Bingo.
Now, apparently, this particular currency depreciated so rapidly that in 1776, interesting date, it returned to a silver standard. So Sweden, having failed at fiat currency, returned to a silver standard. Fiat money also has other roots in the 17th century Europe, having been introduced by the Bank of Amsterdam in 1683. So there were a number of instances in Europe where fiat currency was tried with more or less success. Now, New France, which is actually Canada, in 1685 to 1770, the universally accepted medium of exchange was the beaver pelt. The beaver pelt, okay? So, because obviously, there were quite a few beavers, and that's what they accepted there as currency. Now, however, as the colony expanded, coins from France became widely used. And but there was, under normal circumstances, a shortage of those coins. So in 1685, the colonial authorities in New France, which is, I think that would be, where would that be? Montreal area, maybe Quebec, today.
Possibly.
Yep. Now they found themselves seriously short of money. 1685, a military expedition against the Iroquois Indians had gone badly, and tax revenues were down. So now. Typically, when short of funds, the government simply delay paying merchants for purchases. So we're not paying our bills. But they were between a rock and a hard place, because it was not safe to delay the payment of their soldiers, because there was a risk of mutiny, right? So normally when you're short of funds, you just don't pay your bills. But if you're not paying your bills to guys with guns, that's probably a bad idea. So what happened is that Jacques Meul, the intendant of finance, came up with an ingenious solution. he issued temporary paper money, and it was printed on playing cards, regular playing cards.
Wow.
Okay? Yep. Now this was, of course, a purely temporary solution, and it was not until years later that its role as a medium of exchange was recognized. The first issue occurred in 1685 and was redeemed 3 months later. However, the shortage of money reoccurred, and more issues of card money was made in subsequent years. So these cards were readily accepted by merchants and the public and circulated freely at face value. However, given their wide acceptance as money and the general shortage of coinage, many of the playing cards were not redeemed but remained in circulation. Okay, again, we've got a shortage of actual coinage, which is the the commodity money, but we're keeping the fiat currency in flux because there aren't enough coins around. Eventually, however, the governor of New France acknowledged their useful role as a circulating medium of exchange. As the finances of the French government deteriorated because of the European wars at the time, you may be familiar with, Napoleon and all that, it reduced its financial support for its colonies, so the colonial authorities in Canada relied more and more on card money. By 1757, the government had discontinued payments in coins, and all payments were made in paper. So in an application of Gresham's law, which means bad money drives out good money, people hoarded gold and silver and used paper money instead. And we see that in every crisis situation. In fact, that's exactly what my ancestors did, during World War I, World War II. And that's why they bought so much jewelry, so it's portable wealth, right? It's something that has intrinsic value to some extent. Now, the costs of the war with the British led to a rapid inflation in New France, and following the British conquest in 1760, the paper money became almost worthless. But business did not come to a halt because gold and silver that had been hoarded came back into circulation. So it was like a self-regulating system, if you will. Under the Treaty of Paris in 1763, the French government agreed to convert the outstanding card money into debentures, which are sort of promissory notes, if you will. But with the French government essentially bankrupt, these bonds fell into default, and by 1771 they were entirely worthless. The Royal Canadian Mint today still issues playing card money in commemoration of its history, but now in 1992.5 silver form with gold plate on the edge. Okay, it therefore has intrinsic value, which considerably exceeded that of the fiat currency of its predecessor. Fascinating little side story, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, now we're coming to the 18th and 19th century. Again, this is the official history, guys. The unofficial history we'll share with you next time. The Americans had something, or the American colonies had something called bills of credit, and that was like an earlier fiat currency, if you will, right? Provincial governments, produced notes which were this fiat currency with the promise to allow holders to pay taxes in those notes. So essentially, those bills of credit were used to pay taxes, okay? They were issued to pay current obligations and could be called by levying taxes at a later time. Since the notes were denominated in the local unit of account, they were circulated from person to person in non-tax transactions. Okay, in non-tax transactions. These types of notes were issued particularly in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Massachusetts. And make no mistake, back then there weren't that many states in the United States. In fact, there was no United States for the most part. They were still the colonies. Now, such money was sold at a discount of silver, which the government would then spend and would expire at a fixed point in time later. Again, you have this idea that fiat currency expires and is taken out of circulation. Bills of credit generated some controversy from their inception. Those who wanted to highlight the dangers of inflation focused on the colonies where the bills of credit depreciated most dramatically, which was in New England and the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. Those who have wanted to defend the use of the bills of credit in the colonies focused on the middle colonies, where inflation was practically non-existent. Colonial powers consciously introduced these fiat currencies backed by taxes, hut tax, poll tax, to mobilize economic resources in their new possessions, at least as a transitional arrangement. The purpose of such taxes were later served by property tax. Again, it's an interesting development here, right? Now, the repeated cycle of deflationary hard money, followed by inflationary paper money, continued through much of the 18th and 19th century. Often nations would have dual currencies, with paper trading at some discount to specie-backed money, meaning money backed, by a commodity, whatever it might be, pells or gold or silver. Now, examples of that are the Continental, which was issued by the US Congress before the Constitution, paper versus gold ducats in Napoleonic era Vienna, where paper often traded at 100 to 1 against gold, the South Sea Bubble, which produced banknotes not backed by sufficient reserves, and the Mississippi Company scheme of John Law. You can look those things up yourselves. During the Civil War, the federal government issued United States notes, a form of paper fiat currency popularly known as the greenback. We've spoken about the greenback. Their issue was limited by Congress just slightly over $340 million. During the 1870s, withdrawal of the notes from circulation was opposed by the United States Greenback Party. The term fiat money was used in the resolution of an 1878 party convention. Okay, we've spoken about the greenback and the history that went with it. In the 20th century, and we've spoken about this a little bit before, we come to talk about the Weimar Republic. After World War I, in theory at least, governments still promised to redeem notes in specie on demand. Meaning, if you go to the bank and you've got 100 Reichsmark, $100, 100 pounds, you should get that value in gold or silver, or whatever the backing was at the time. However, the costs of the war, which was horrendous, not only in lives, but in actual physical value, made that impossible. Okay, and they suspended the redemption against gold and silver. And since there was no direct penalty for doing that, governments were not immediately responsible for the economic consequences of printing more money, which led to hyperinflation. For example, the hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic. I want to tell you, as I said before, that it took 100 Reichsmark in the morning to buy a loaf of bread, and by the afternoon, a barrel full of Reichsmark to buy that same loaf of bread. And the next day, you probably would have come with a truckload of money. They printed 100 billion Reichsmark notes, okay, unheard of.
The same thing's happening in South Africa.
Boom, exactly, right? It's the same system at work. It is just hyperinflation, a lack of confidence, and an oversupply of money in the market, right? Because the government can just go on printing money, yeah. And who's doing that right now, Dave? Who's printing money like crazy?
Oh, all the governments of the world, but in the US particularly.
That's exactly right. Yes, that's not going to cause any problems. Now, excuse me. From 1944 to 1971, the Bretton Woods Agreement, look it up, fixed the value of 35 United States dollars to 1 troy ounce of gold. Okay? That was when the United States dollar was a commodity currency. It was fixed to gold, a gold standard, you might remember. Other currency were pegged to the US dollar at fixed rates because it was a gold standard. The US promised to redeem dollars in gold to other central banks. Trade imbalances were corrected by gold reserve exchanges or by loans from the International Monetary Fund, my favorite organization in the world. The Bretton Woods system collapsed in what became known as the Nixon shock. Yes, our favorite president. This was a series of economic measures taken by Richard Nixon in 1971, including unilaterally cancelling the direct convertibility of the United States dollar to gold, essentially cancelling the gold standard.
That's right.
Okay, so that's what he did. No longer, but go on. Since then, a system of national fiat monies has been used globally, with freely floating exchange rates between the major currencies. That's how people make money on currency exchanges on Wall Street, by the way, because it's free floating, right?
Yeah, it goes up, it goes down due to sales between them. Then they profit from their own sale by buying it back.
Correct. Now, if you've seen the movie Shadow Recruit, if you haven't seen it, you haven't missed much. But if you have seen it, you will understand.
We're terribly sorry. Yeah.
Look, it's it is what it is, I guess. But essentially, you will understand the kind of economic mechanism that underlies currency exchanges. So in that movie, the premise was that the Russians were artificially inflating the American dollar, even though the American dollar was meant to go down because of the various economic variables. Yep. Yeah, correct. But that didn't happen. So they went to investigate, and they found out, yeah, that's in fact true, and the Russians are artificially propping up the American dollar. And what they wanted to do is, the plan was to sell off, trillions of dollars in a shock sell-off, if you will, which would immediately deflate the American dollar value, and which would lead other investors in the American dollar to also sell the American dollar, further devaluing it, and that was meant to be coupled with the terrorist attack. That's the plot of the movie, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry if I gave it away. But essentially, what it means is, spoiler alert. Yeah, that's right. So that's actually that's a mechanism that can work. So you have to understand this. If you hold enough of currency in reserve,
of something. Yeah.
Correct. So right now, I want to give you a real world example. The Chinese are holding hundreds of billions, maybe more, of United States dollars in bonds, in treasury bonds, and in actual currency. Okay, as an investment. That is giving artificial value to the United States dollar. If the Chinese decided to sell off those dollars, the United States dollar would plummet in value. Plummet. There would be panic selling, and trust me, I mean, Wall Street is not an intelligent animal. They don't think logically. They just it's emotional. It's driven by emotion and cocaine. So you need to be very careful.
And computer variables.
Yeah.
With all the small people with computer variables saying if it goes down 45 cents, sell.
Correct. Right. So that's exactly right. So the Chinese could really hurt us, but obviously the thinking is, well, the Chinese wouldn't do that because they're holding it in reserve to prop up their own currency and so forth, and make themselves economically stronger. Sure, that might be the case, but the point is it could happen. Okay, you could if you have enough currency of any country, you can make that happen. In fact, this is the truth behind the stock market. If you own enough of any given stock or any given industry stocks, you determine the fate of the market. Your selling and buying, if you're rich enough, determines which way the market goes.
Exactly.
So you control the market. In fact, I saw that in action in a small way when I was working for a
company that won't go named. Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. So what they did. They went and sent me to buy shares of a certain company because they wanted to affect the share price. The company was small enough, and the share issuing was small enough for them to do that. I mean, there were millions of dollars in play, but essentially it was a small controlled environment in which they could in fact control the share price by them selling or buying those shares of that particular company. It worked, right?
I have another example. So, for instance, if every person in the planet of a particular group, and I don't want to name anyone, but if a particular group decided to buy just across the board or even focused in on a particular company, if you have 1 billion people all spending $1 and buying penny stock of a particular company slowly over time and have a triggered sale because of a particular date or time, that would collapse that company or that market. So if you're doing futures, Forex, doesn't matter what it is. If you're doing, just pick a silo, banking silo, for instance, that sudden leap of people away from it triggers a cascade. And the cascade is what causes the drops, the further drops. And they were very cautious about the bust of they always got the .com bust and then the GFC, where people started to sell to a particular amount. My personal setting on my own financial stock rating, and I said, sell if it goes by $1. If it goes down $1, sell it. $33 now. I won't lose much. I bought it $5 less than that anyway. It's not really going to hurt me. So to protect my own investment, I've got my own variables. Other people have their own variables. The moment you start triggering some of these, it's a cascade. It's a landslide. It bottoms out and it becomes worthless.
Yep.
All right. So we talked about this on one of our other shows where it was how much risk is a company who decides to go public. How much risk are they putting on that leg of a financial amount of quantity of their base asset? How much are they willing to risk on it? Because they're betting it as well. They're getting this money for free from you buying a piece of paper. It's not real. It doesn't really exist. You're giving them money. Really, you're getting a receipt tab.
Correct. In fact, let me tell you how much money actually exists in the United States. So this is around money creation regulation, which is a beautiful segue. The central bank normally introduces new money to the economy by purchasing financial assets or lending money to financial institutions. Okay, commercial banks then multiply this base money by credit creation through fractional reserve banking, which we're going to talk about in detail as well. Okay, now that expands the money supply of or the total money supply of broad money. Okay, which is cash plus demand deposits. However, in modern economies, relatively little of the supply of broad money is in physical currency. Again, this is an official statement, okay, not conspiracy. For example, and this is in December 2010 in the United States, of the $8,853.4 billion in broad money supply, only 915.7 billion, which is about 10%, consisted of physical coins and paper money. Ooh, where's the rest? It's like the universe. 98% is dark matter.
Exactly.
What? Where is it? I don't know.
98% of the universe is only real currency. There you go.
Now, yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, if everybody wanted to get their money, it just wouldn't be there.
It doesn't exist.
No, if you've got $1,000 in the bank, to put it in real terms, you can only get 100.
Yep.
1,000. You can only get $100 back. That's all you can get back. And then we won't even talk about what happened in Greece. I mean, that's going to come up in
Cyprus.
And Cyprus. That's going to come up in a separate show. So for the most part, though, the manufacturing, the actual physical creation of the money is usually the responsibility of the central bank or the Treasury. In the United States, however, it is the Federal Reserve that prints the money on order of the Treasury. So the Treasury goes, oh, look, I need more money. And the Federal Reserve goes, yes, sir, and prints it. Now, do remember that the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. Privately, and that's the music. Oh, man.
Yes, privately owned, but run by friends of the government. No worries. Everyone, please tune in next week when we'll be talking to Laura Eisenhower. Special guest.
Jump rooms. Yes.
Absolutely. Conspiracies, Mars, you name it, she's on it. And we'll see you next
pick up
week.
Inflation. Yeah, we'll pick up inflation the week after, guys.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Take care, everyone.